The state of One Piece in 2002 was one full of endless possibilities. In the anime, the Straw Hats had just added a lovable new crew member named Tony Chopper, and the series was amidst its biggest arc yet in Alabasta. As episode 103 of the anime swiftly approached, One Piece graced theaters with its third anime film, One Piece: Chopper's Kingdom on the Island of Strange Animals. Chopper's Kingdom holds a special place among the One Piece movies for a few reasons. The first is that it's the final One Piece movie to be released as part of the Spring Toei Anime Fair. Toei's Anime Fair ran every year from 1990 to 2002, so if you're watching all my One Piece movie videos in order, this is the last time you're gonna have to hear me talk about it. Just like its predecessors, Chopper's Kingdom was released as part of a double feature, continuing the Digimon pairing with Digimon Tamer's Runaway Locomon. And like its immediate predecessor, Chopper's Kingdom was released hand in hand with another 5-minute short, Dream Soccer King. Oh my god, it really is so f***ing warm in here. Like the previous One Piece short, Dream Soccer King served a secondary purpose. Although there wasn't a new song to promote this time around, there was a cause for celebration. Japan was set to co-host the 2002 World Cup alongside Korea just a few months after the short's premiere. Japan would end up losing round 1 to Turkey in a 0-1 match. Dream Soccer King is a rather simple short, consisting of the Straw Hats and a soccer shootout against a collection of various foes they faced up until this point. The Straw Hats make their goals, the villains don't, and poor Kobe is stuck as the goalie. The Straw Hats win after Sanji launches a ball across the entire Grand Line, and then Luffy wakes up. With soccer still in his mind, he proceeds to violate Usopp with his foot. The single most notable thing about Dream Soccer King, though, is that this character, the announcer from the short, is named Odachi, and is so far the only character in the entirety of One Piece to ever be voiced by Eiichiro Oda. It really is just so warm. This video is just gonna be me progressively stripping. Back to Chopper's Kingdom, and the usual plot summary that's been oversimplified to the point that you should really just watch the movie if you want to understand what I have to say afterwards. The movie starts with the Straw Hats on the Going Merry discussing a piece of treasure on a nearby island. So nearby, in fact, that the island's geysers launch him clear over it and Chopper falls off the ship, L+ ratio. Upon landing, Chopper accidentally falls ass first onto a spike and is crowned King of the Animals. The former King of the Animals, a chimera-like lion creature, recently passed away, and the rest of the animals from the island are awaiting a sign from the heavens for a new king, hence Chopper being crowned after he fell from the heavens. The rest of the Straw Hats, Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Usopp, Sanji, and nobody else, land on the other side of the island and set out to look for Chopper, only to be met with a talking bird. He's one of the animal elders, and one of the 2 animals on the island that can speak human. The other is another bird that's friends with the only human who lives on the island, a kid named Mobambi. What if this bird just decided he didn't like Mobambi, and he's like the only one that can speak human other than the old bird, and Mobambi would just be left without friends? The Straw Hats don Usopp design disguises, and play around with some of the animals until they're interrupted by a stampede of horn eaters, predatory beasts who chase down horned animals. After being chased around for a bit, they eventually stumble upon the men controlling the beasts, Battler and his underlings, Hot Dog and Hebe. Quick aside, like a fair few translations in these early One Piece movies, Battler's name was under dispute for a while. Although eventually a wanted poster in a future movie would reveal that his name is supposed to be Battler, his name was initially translated as Butler. The situation overall was very similar to the El Drago, El Dorago translation. Battler is gathering as many horns as he can so he can chow down on them American style, rare and slathered with sauce, in hopes of finding the island's treasure, the King's Horns, which grant immeasurable power upon consumption. Battler, upon realizing he gave away his entire plan to the Straw Hats, pulls out his horn-eater controlling violin and commands them to attack. Unfortunately, the violin also works on Luffy because he's an idiot. The Straw Hats tumble off a cliff, see the devastation left in Battler's wake, and realize that Chopper also has horns, which means he's also in danger. They end up getting trailed by Battler after Luffy assaults the elderly bird and forces them to take them to the King of the Animals. When they learn that that king is actually Chopper, Luffy immediately asks for a meal and eats an entire feast. Unfortunately, this makes him too big to fit through the doorway when Battler attacks, so Chopper bravely runs away to distract the horn eaters from the other animals. This results in a chase sequence where Nami and Usopp end up trapping the horn eaters, leaving them to presumably starve to death. Chopper ends up in front of Battler because Usopp punted him away for his own safety, and elsewhere, Mobambi decides to steal the dead king's horns to save Chopper. Meanwhile, Zoro and Sanji are fighting Hot Dog and Hebe, but like opposite of how it normally would be done. See, normally Zoro fights the sword guy and Sanji fights the martial arts guy, but here, Zoro fights the martial arts guy while Sanji fights the sword guy. They both end up winning, of course, but it's still a unique choice among other entries into the series. Chopper is being chased by Battler when Mobambi arrives with the horns and his bird friend from earlier to help. The horns successfully distract Battler and they lead him to his would-be doom if he didn't have a rope and 12 years of rodeo experience. Luckily, Luffy's there to save everyone, but this also gives Battler the opportunity to scarf down them tasty phallic gold horns, and he's granted the power of the Animal King. The Chimera power is explicitly called out as being similar to a devil fruit earlier in the narrative, and I'll get into why I don't like it in more detail in just a bit, but for now, just know that although the design isn't awful, I think that the power is. A bunch of anime BS happens, Chopper's Rumble Ball forms aren't enough to beat him, it turns out Battler killed Mobambi's father, and Luffy shows up to save the day by holding onto Battler's horns through the pain of the heat that they generate, and everyone lives happily ever after when Mobambi is crowned king for some reason. Let's start with the art style of the movie. Compared to Clockwork Island, the shapes and proportions are more on model, but the colors are all super saturated and plagued by a frankly annoying amount of rim lighting. Everyone gets a lovely halo of light on every edge of their body, and it just leaves them looking perpetually sweaty. The series proper only ever reserves those strong highlights for meat, sweats, and exercise, and everyone in Chopper's Kingdom is just so shiny. The creature designs in the film are very reminiscent of Gaimon's Island that I'm too lazy to look up the name of. A choice that I have to assume was deliberate, unless it wasn't. The idea of mashing up 2 or 3 animals isn't exactly groundbreaking, but it's the variety that makes it feel like a callback to everyone's favorite box-bound shrub of a man. My personal favorite are the rock rhinos that the Straw Hats unknowingly sit on. But other than minor nitpicks and a bigger criticism that I'll tackle later, I don't think that my problems with Chopper's Kingdom lie in the directing, but rather in the writing. Let's take a look at the film's primary supporting character, Mobambi. Mobambi is the sole permanent human resident of Crown Island. His father was killed by Battler after studying the island's animals and refusing to give up the information on their treasure, and so the animals all took Mobambi in. And since Mobambi has understandable pirate-related trauma, he's initially hesitant when Chopper calls himself a pirate, but then begs him to leave the yo-ho life behind due to his desperation for a new king. Wanting Chopper to stick around is his primary motivation throughout the movie. He gives Chopper a set of his old clothes as regal garb, he brings injured animals to Chopper to get him to stay longer, and even after he's crowned king, he refuses to let Chopper say no to staying behind. But that's also his entire character. Every interaction he has either revolves around Chopper, the position of king, or pirates, which wouldn't be awful if he also had the secondary character traits that he is unfortunately missing. And the decision to crown him, of all people, king at the end just kind of comes out of nowhere. It's brought up as part of a prophecy regarding the crown part of Crown Island, but narratively it's completely unearned. He makes a choice expecting exile, but his bravery in protecting Chopper is rewarded with kingship instead. Cool in isolation, but completely out of left field when you take into account the complete and utter lack of build-up for that reward. And thematically, how does that even play into the movie? What even is the theme of Chopper's Kingdom? Deliberate or not, all stories have a message, and for the life of me, I have been struggling to figure out what message Chopper's Kingdom was trying to say. I think it's something along the lines of leadership is best suited for those who don't seek power. Kind of like that line from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where no one capable of being elected president should be allowed to be elected president. Chopper outright refuses the title of king multiple times, but still sticks around to treat the injured and plans to sacrifice himself to save his temporary subjects. Mobambi never asks to be king, only for a new king to be crowned, and his heroism is what convinces the animals that he should be king. Battler, on the other hand, spends the whole movie looking for the king's power, but once he has it, literally all of the animals on the island turn on him and Luffy strips him of it immediately, sending his living corpse into the stratosphere. Speaking of that fight, I think that this is the moment where the direction falls flat. The other action sequences aren't anything special, but they are competently put together. Seriously, just look them up separately from the movie if you're only in it for the cool fight sequences. But Luffy and Chopper versus Battler is just disappointing. Chopper is set up to be a coward at the beginning of the movie. The fight against Battler should be this triumphant moment where Chopper turns brave against the monster. But Chopper already had his turn to bravery when he stood up to human Battler and distracted the monstrous Horn Eaters. This ends up making his Rumble Ball moment feel like a repeat of his arc rather than a reaffirmation of it. And it's only made worse when his Rumble Ball forms don't do any serious damage to Battler, because if anyone other than Luffy saves the day, little Mamakichi is gonna be upset, so things can only end one way. But it's also the way that Luffy saves the day that I have trouble with. Battler's horns are super tough and can also heat up, which means that Luffy has to fight through the burning damage to— hey, wait a second. This is just the climax from Clockwork Island Adventure, wearing a fake mustache. You can't fool me, Tilly. I'm on to your games. In all seriousness, it just genuinely feels like they couldn't figure out a decent solution for Luffy not kicking Battler's ass 6 ways to Sunday, so they just amalgamated Luffy's initial bouts with Crocodile and Bear King and called it good. I don't want to end on a negative note, so instead I'm going to leave things off on a round of things I couldn't figure out where else to fit in this video. I like most of the Straw Hats' outfits. Nami's dress is cute, Zoro and Luffy both look good, Chopper looks funny in his little regal garb, but Sanji is dressed like he sells coke as a side gig during his 9 to 5 as a promoter for New York City's seediest nightclub. Voted least fun and most likely club to get mugged in 3 years running. All of those outfits are also actually from pre-existing sources, mostly manga covers. This movie is the first that doesn't fit anywhere into canon. It takes place in a status quo where Chopper is on the crew, but Vivi and Robin are both missing. A status quo that lasted for all of half an episode in the anime. There are a couple other reasons it doesn't fit into canon, but I'm just going to choose to believe believe that Vivi and Karu are just sleeping in the lower decks of the Mary in the world's most intense stress nap. Crown Island pretty clearly has a pre-existing predator-prey dynamic. Even if we ignore the Horn Eaters, these alligators are ready to eat the Straw Hats at a moment's notice. When Luffy asks for meat, it scares all of the animals in Chopper's royal court as though they've never heard of someone eating meat before, but they shouldn't be surprised by the existence of a predator. Is it just me, or is the implication that predators are segregated either into their own society or as second-class citizens, like what from the bad guys from Zootopia tried to do? Remember what Arlong Park taught us, kids. Racism is bad. Chopper carries around a paper copy of Herlock's flag in his hat. This only comes up once and is never mentioned before or again. A lot of the problems in this movie would have been solved by Chopper just going into big man mode instead of running around in his little man form because Heavy Point doesn't have horns. If I had to give you one final judgment on Chopper's Kingdom on the Island of Strange Animals, it's that you should probably just skip it unless you are the world's most hardcore One Piece fan. The writing is subpar, the directing is just fine, it's inconsistent with canon, and to top it all off, the movie doesn't even address how Chopper has been committing tax fraud for years. 4 out of 10. That's all I've got for this one, but if you want more, you can subscribe to the channel to get notified for when I release my next one of these movie reviews when I cover the 4th One Piece movie, Dead End Adventure. And if you aren't patient, you can just watch my Sky Island Saga video because that's mostly where I'm going to be pulling it from. Or you can go watch my other redo reviews on the pre-Toei One Piece anime or the first 2 movies. Special thank you to all these lovely folks who have subscribed to my Patreon page. With your powers combined, you've granted me the ability to turn a Netflix subscription into a tax write-off, and I don't know if there's enough words in the English language to express my gratitude properly. And sorry, this is voiceover only, I kinda took a while to edit this video.